Good evening and good afternoon. My name is Mr. Lorange, and with my colleague Ms. Urbanova, together from the Corax Foundation, we'll be having a match from the Interuniversity Law Debate Tournament, 8th edition, and this is the day 3, last match in the group for these two teams that you see today. They are in the group G, and they received the topic again a week ago, so this topic is different from the two different topics, and they got in the first two matches. And they'll be debating this time on trade law particularly. But before we jump into it, let's see who are the debaters for today. So I will give the floor first for the University of the West Indies, Miss Khalifa Wilkinson. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for the warm welcome. It's nice to be here today.
Thank you, welcome. We have as well in Paris Miss Emily Dietmar. Welcome.
Hello everyone, nice to be here and I'm looking forward to our debate.
Thank you and welcome. And we have as well in Porto, Spain, Miss Vishala Jabbar. Welcome.
Hi, it's nice to be here, so good luck to everybody.
Thank you, welcome. And we have as well Mr. Martin Velaf in Paris.
Hello, I'm really glad to be here and I wish good luck to everyone.
Thank you. And we have as well Miss Adrienne Murray in Porto, Spain.
Hi, so nice to meet all of y'all. I hope we have a nice and successful debate today.
Thank you, you are welcome. And finally, Miss Meghna Mahbubani, welcome.
Hello, thank you for the welcome, and I hope we have a fruitful debate.
Thank you. So the topic which was given to the two teams a week ago was carbon border adjustment mechanisms are essential to ensure fair competition in international trade. So now we'll share my screen for the allocation of position with the randomizer. And the team will be in favor of starting with the first introduction. So as you can see, there are two chances. One chance to be in favor, one chance to be against the motion. And I will activate now the randomizer. So for this match, that will be the University of the West Indies will be in favor of the motion, and then we'll be starting the first introduction, while the Paris 1 Pantheon-Sorbonne University will defend the position against the motion. So it means concretely the University of the West Indies will defend the position that carbon border adjustment mechanisms are essential to ensuring fair competition in international trade, while Paris Pantheon-Sorbonne University will defend the position carbon border adjustment mechanisms are not essential to ensuring fair competition in international trade. So now you will have 5 minutes to review your notes, and yes, 5 minutes, yep. And we'll hear the introduction by the team from Trinidad and Tobago. So we are done with the 5 minutes of preparation, so I stop sharing my screen. So remind as well the viewers on internet that when they will see the yellow card, it means that there are still 30 seconds in the speaking time, the person can continue to speak, and when they will see the red card, means it's the end of the speaking time, they may finish their sentence, but it's advised to not start a new sentence. So now I will give the floor to the team in favor. So this is University of the West Indies. For your introduction, you have 4 minutes.
Am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
Honorable judges, Robert Swan once said that the greatest threat of our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. And this quote highlights the urgency and the responsibility that each of us as global citizens must take in solving the climate crisis. We cannot wait for others to act, and tools like the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanisms, called CBAMs, are critical in ensuring that all nations are held accountable for their role in environmental protections. Today, my team and I have proposed 3 compelling arguments. Firstly, CBAMs are essential for ensuring fair competition by preventing carbon leakage. They are the best alternative to the destructive cycle of green subsidiary wars and are a critical step towards a sustainable and equitable global marketplace. Firstly, the essence of CBAMs lie in their ability to address the grave issue of carbon leakage, where companies such as Alcoa have relocated to regions with a stringent environmental regulations like the EU to countries with a lax tax systems like Singapore. And these countries relocate to take advantage of a lower production cost, which is unacceptable. We cannot allow this shift to continue unchecked, as it distorts the global trade and, more importantly, exacerbates the environmental crisis. CBAMs impose an equivalent carbon price on imports, ensuring that both the domestic and foreign producers face the same environmental costs. And this makes international trade fairer, as it prevents countries that do not adhere to the climate standards from undercutting those that do. As the Canadian Supreme Court affirmed in reference REGGPPA, the effective global collaboration is crucial in addressing emissions. And we must implement CBAMs the same way the Montreal Protocol united nations to tackle ozone depletion. Secondly, without CBAMs, nations are left to rely on unsustainable green subsidies to protect their industries from the cost of carbon pricing, which only leads to a destructive race to the bottom. Consider the US Inflation Act of 2022, which allocated 369 billion green subsidies, creating trade tensions between the EU and Canada. And similarly, in China, the coal subsidies enabled its industries to push global prices down, undermining the efforts by nations committed to a cleaner production. This perpetuates the vicious cycle where countries that fail to act on climate change are rewarded with an unfair trade advantage, while those striving for sustainability are punished. CBAMs provide a solution to this distortion by ensuring that imports face the same carbon cost as domestic products. They stop the race to the bottom by pricing carbon fairly and equitably. From a legal perspective, CBAMs align with the WTO Article 20, which allows trade measures necessary for protecting the environment as long as they are non-discriminatory and applied fairly. And in this regard, CBAMs are not just a trade tool. They are an essential part of the global solution for both climate change and trade fairness. Finally, the heart of CBAM is the realization that we live in an interconnected world, one where no single nation can solve the climate crisis on their own. And in 2021, the global carbon dioxide emissions surged to 3.6 billion tons, which is the highest ever recorded. Therefore, CBAMs represent an opportunity to create a truly sustainable and equitable global marketplace. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we hear as well the introduction on the side of Paris 1 Pantheon-Sorbonne University. You have 4 minutes.
Am I visible and audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, I will start in 3, 2, 1. Okay. So good evening, esteemed judges, organizers, and colleagues. It is a pleasure today to be here to discuss an issue that is far-reaching that has far-reaching economic, legal, and geopolitical implications. While we think that climate action is imperative, we stand in opposition to this motion, arguing that carbon border adjustment mechanisms, hereby CBAMs, fail both as trade policy and as an environmental tool. To ensure clarity, we define key terms relevant to this debate. CBAMs, according to the World Trade Organization discussions on trade and environmental policies, or tariffs or levies on imports based on the carbon intensity of their production, with stated goal of maintaining competitive balance between domestic industry and foreign producers. Fair competition, as outlined by Article 3 of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, is an international trade means that should not create unfair advantage for domestic industries through their trade distortions, ensuring that all market participants compete under transparent and equitable conditions. Trade protectionism, which is defined by the World Trade Organization jurisprudence, refers to governments imposing trade barriers such as tariffs or quotas that restrict imports to protect domestic industries, which often leads to retaliatory measures and global economic inefficiencies. CBAMs, by their very nature, violate foundational principles of international trade law. Under the World Trade Organization rules, trade measures must not discriminate unfairly against foreign goods. The Article 1 of the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs, the most favored nation principle, prohibits policies that give preferential treatment to some countries over others. CBAMs risk being categorized as discriminatory and protectionist, opening doors to legal challenges and retaliatory tariffs. For example, we have the Shrimps Turtle case in the US, where the World Trade Organization rules against the US ban on shrimp imports, which aimed to protect sea turtles on the grounds that it was applied inconsistently and unfairly targeted certain countries. The ruling made clear that environmental trade restrictions must be non-discriminatory and provide flexibility for developing economies, two conditions that the CBAMs failed to meet. Beyond legality, CBAMs disproportionately harm developing nations, which often lack the financial and technological resources to meet strict environmental standards. Countries in Africa and South Asia, for example, rely heavily on industries such as steel, aluminium, and cement, sectors targeted by CBAMs. Unlike developed nations, these countries cannot simply transition overnight to cleaner production methods. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change enshrines the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities, meaning that developing economies should not be penalized for their lower capacity to reduce emissions. Instead of fostering cooperation, CBAM risk deepening economic divides and provoking trade wars. Nations such as India, China, and South Africa have already condemned EU CBAM as unjust economic barrier, threatening to challenge
Thank you very much. Now we are going to the first rebuttals, so I will give the floor to the team from the University of the West Indies for the first rebuttal. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. Honorable judges, without CBAMs, nations will continue to rely on massive subsidies to shield domestic industries from carbon pricing. And this would create advantages and spark a race to the bottom. This isn't just inefficient, it distorts global markets and undermines fair competition. Take the US Inflation Reduction Act, which allocated $369 billion in green subsidies. This created tensions with the EU and Canada and mirrored China's subsidization of coal-based industries, allowing markets domination at the expense of fairness. Science Direct even noted that China's subsidies drove a 23.8% reduction in US exports to China, while its exports to Japan soared by 25.5%. And this is an issue nations investing in environmental protection are penalized for, while polluters are rewarded. And while I appreciate my opponents' opinions, CBAM solved this because they price imports based on carbon content, and they ensure that countries with stronger environmental regulations are not undercut by those with weaker standards. The EU's carbon border adjustment regulation directly addresses the imbalance and takes a crucial step toward a fairer global market. This isn't just about trade. It's a climate solution that aligns with the Paris Agreement, and it prevents high carbon industries from dominating the planet at the planet's expense. From a legal standpoint, CBAMs align with the WTO's General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, specifically Article 20. So while they did mention Article 3, Article 20 does permit measures that are not discriminatory and that are necessary, and a CBAM will be necessary because it stops the race to the bottom, and it ensures that nations who prioritize sustainability are not undercut by those subsidizing pollution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we hear as well the first rebuttal on the side of Paris 1 Pantheon-Sorbonne University. You have as well 2 minutes.
Am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
Perfect. Well, my opponent claims that CBAMs are essential for fair competition and effective climate action. But let's take a closer look. What CBAM really does or do is create trade barriers under the disguise of environmental policy, disproportionately harming developing countries and risking economic retaliation. Instead of fostering global cooperation, CBAM sends a message that climate policy is a tool for economic control rather than shared responsibility. And let's talk about fairness. You argue that CBAM levels the playing field, for example, but in reality, they tilt in favor of wealthy nations that can afford aggressive carbon pricing. Developing countries, which often rely on carbon-intensive industries for economic growth, are then hit the hardest, not because they refuse to act on climate, but because they lack the resources for rapid transitions. So if you truly want effective climate action, we need cooperation, not coercion. CBAMs are incredibly risky, and as Martin already mentioned in his introduction, under the WTO rules, they require non-discrimination between trading partners, so the most favored nation principle. So they might potentially be completely illegal, and rather than imposing tariffs, we should then be working toward global agreements that help all countries transition to clean energy, because climate action succeeds when it's collective, not when it's punitive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we hear the second rebuttals. We'll hear first the second rebuttal by the University of the West Indies. You have 2 minutes.
Am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Honorable judges, my opponents may claim that CBAMs still are not essential, but allow me to counter that assertion firmly. CBAMs are absolutely critical in ensuring fair competition in international trade, primarily by addressing the glaring imbalance caused by carbon leakage. Consider the European Union, which enforces rigorous climate policies like the emissions trading system. These policies, while commendable, impose heavy compliance costs on domestic industries. For example, Alcoa, which is a major aluminum producer, left Europe due to the steep energy and carbon costs, proving that companies are moving to countries with lenient environmental regulations so that they can produce carbon-intensive goods at lower prices. And this is quite frankly outrageous. So without an internationally recognized CBAM, we were stalling progress in the fight against climate change. Carbon leakage will continue to rise and emissions will only climb higher. In 2021, the International Energy Agency reported global CO2 emissions that hit a record of 36.3 billion tons. We cannot condone a system that penalizes countries with strong climate action, but profits those with lax regulation. This not only distorts global trade, but it also deepens the environmental crisis, which is a factor issues my colleagues fail to address. CBAMs are the solution, and by imposing an equivalent carbon price on imports, we level the playing field. Domestic and foreign producers would bear the same environmental costs, ensuring fairness and incentivizing greener practices globally. We are proposing CBAM as equal, and the Canadian Supreme Court case in reference re-GGPPA upheld the necessity of a federal carbon pricing system, and it reinforced the need for global collaboration to address emissions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we hear as well the second rebuttals on the side of Paris 1 Pantheon-Sorbonne University. You have as well 2 minutes.
Am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. My opponent mentioned carbon leakage. However, it must be understood that the emission of carbon pollution is actually extremely hard to measure and quantify. So what of it? Do we actually have to recourse to punitive measures in order to punish member states of the World Trade Organization for emission of carbon gas? That doesn't make quite sense, given that the Paris Agreement allows the enhancement of financial measures as well as technology transfers in order to allow the emission of carbon emissions to be countered in another way than by punitive measures, which, like my colleague mentioned earlier, might not even be the most effective. I would also like to come back to the point that my opponent mentioned the Article 20 of the World Trade Organization treaty. However, the point that they're trying to make, referring to the paragraph G and the paragraph D of this article, seems to be that since this article allows exceptions to the most favored nation principle as well as the national treatment principle, that we may impose the CBAMs. However, we must remember that all of these articles have to answer to the chapeau of the treaty. And the chapeau of the treaty states that arbitrary or unjustifiable measures cannot be taken in this context. Disguised restrictions of international trade are not compatible with the World Trade Organization. And as my colleague mentioned earlier, developing countries, as well as the least developing countries, India, Brazil, and South Africa, have already denounced these CBAMs to be a disguise or disguised disadvantages for these countries, conveying a sort of protectionism that would be vehicled from European Union countries, and as well as not knowing the impact of differentiated responsibilities that are known by the UNFCCC as well as the Kyoto Protocol.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we are reaching the conclusions. So I give the floor first to the University of the West Indies for your conclusion. You have 2 minutes.
Am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
Honorable judges, the opposition denounces CBAMs because it is arbitrary and unjustifiable. However, is it truly arbitrary and unjustifiable to consider climate change? Let us remember, we are not simply discussing CBAM as a trade policy. We are confronting the future of our planet and the integrity of global commerce. Remember, the greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. The responsibility to act falls on all of us. CBAMs offer a pathway to ensure that no nation can avoid this duty to address climate change, regardless if they are developing or developed, while maintaining a fair and level playing field in international trade. In the face of rising emissions and increasingly lax environmental standards in some parts of the world, CBAMs provide an essential tool to combat carbon leakage. They are to ensure that countries striving to reduce their emissions do not undercut those who are choosing the less resistant path. By imposing a fair carbon price on imports, CBAM prevents the distortion of trade, creates a space where global competition is based on sustainable practices rather than cheap pollution. Moreover, the alternative, a world fueled by green subsidiary wars, would lead down a destructive path, where trade relations would sour, retaliatory tariffs would escalate, and the global market would become fragmented. CBAMs are not just a trade policy. They are a step forward to creating a sustainable and equitable marketplace, where those who have made hard choices to protect the environment are not penalized by their efforts. As we stand at the crossroad of histories, the choices we make today will resonate for generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we hear the conclusion on the side of Paris 1 Pantheon-Sorbonne University. You have as well 2 minutes.
Am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Honorable judges, while well-intended, CBOMs fell in their legal, economic, and diplomatic objectives. Instead of fostering a global cooperation, CBOMs risk trade disputes, retaliation, and deepening inequalities between developed and developing nations. Moreover, by penalizing developing economies instead of assisting them, CBOMs violate the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities enshrined in the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Instead of trade penalties, we should focus on the investment in green technology, capacity building for emerging economies, and cooperative global frameworks, not trade barriers that threaten economic stability and international relations. The climate crisis demands unity, not division, and CBOMs, far from being a solution, are a step backward in the global climate diplomacy. For these reasons, we firmly reject the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we just heard the two conclusions, so it means from now you are not under evaluation by the judge. So you can relax and you can rest and come back as well in the room. In Port of Spain, you can open the camera and we'll collect the impressions and of course on the topic as well, not just the performance during the match, from each of you. So I will start first asking Miss Dietmar, what do you think about the match, the performance of the two teams, and the topic?
Thank you. The match was very, very interesting, and I appreciate the arguments brought forward. And I also have to say that the topic was immensely, it was immensely enriching researching the topic, seeing as it's something that interests me a lot, and combining international trade law with a very up and coming topic, and seeing as it will enter into force in 2026. And we've got all of these new articles coming out now, and with the political situation, it is highly, highly interesting. So I really appreciate the motion. And yeah, thank you for debating. It was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Miss Wilkinson, what do you think about the match, debate, and topic?
I think it was a very informative debate. It was also really well balanced. And like my colleague mentioned, I think that it's really important to be aware of these things that are actually affecting us, because sometimes it's hard to realize that, okay, this work that you're doing, you're learning about law, you're learning about this or that, it's not just theoretical, it's something that's actually happening. So I think it's very important to inform us, who are the upcoming generation, to know what we're getting into, and even entering law, like what we can do about this. So I thought it was really good.
Thank you very much. Mr. Velev, what do you think about the match, the topic, and the performance of the teams?
So first of all, I think our opponent, they were very strong and their arguments were really good. Then considering the topic, I would say it was really interesting, and I couldn't agree more with my opponent and also my colleague Emily. I think it's really important because it kind of helps us stay informed on issues that are sometimes a bit far or abstract for us. And I think it's really interesting to see the recent developments in those areas, and also combine this with the political situation. So I think it was really interesting, and the research was quite interesting as well, because trade law actually interests me as well, and to combine that with the climate aspect was something new and something I learned from, definitely.
Thank you very much. Miss Jabbar, what did you think about the topic?
Hi, so I thought that the debate today was really great. I thought that the topic was really interesting because it was not something that we learned in our classes. So we had to do a lot of research outside, but it was exciting to know that it's something that is coming to play in 2026. And it was really exciting to see the different perspectives of both teams. And I'm sure it was fun for both of y'all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Miss Maboubani, what did you think about the topic?
I highly enjoyed how our opponents were very expressive in their intonation, in their gestures, all that. I would like to congratulate them for that. And of course, I highly enjoyed the topic because, of course, international trade is something that interests, I know, my team and my colleagues a lot, as well as myself. And not to mention that this motion might have been my favorite just for the fact that it opens your perspectives on a wide range of topics of international law, climate law, also to think about national legislations on the topic. It's very, very interesting. It allows you to comparative law. I found myself comparing legal systems. So overall, very good experience. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Miss Murray, what do you think about the topic and the performance of the teams?
I enjoyed the topic because I personally have an interest in environmental law and international law. So it was great merging the two. And then I believe it's very informative for the current issues. So the implementation of CBAMs and then the whole climate issue that we're facing and the fact that we have to try and find a way to accommodate for people while also trying to protect the environment. And I enjoyed this debate, honestly. I found our opponents, they were very well versed in the topic, and they made it quite challenging, actually, to combat them. So it was really interesting, and they really kept us on our toes. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I have to say, after two matches, the third match already is, I would say, capitalizing on what you have done already as well in terms of strategy and in terms of technique for researching as well, optimizing the time as well before each match. So again, in few days, if you have time, try to watch your very first match. You'll be surprised how much, let's say, things have changed between the different, I would say, match that you have been yourself competing into. So now, in the last part of the session, just one question this time. Do you see yourself working in which area of law? So if you already know, maybe. So is it connected to some of the topics that you have been researching? Or maybe another total different area of law, which is maybe not yet in the competition, might be during the next rounds. So we start first with Miss Wilkinson. Which area of law do you prefer?
Yeah, so honestly, I am very interested in international law, and I know that there are a lot of different sectors of international law. So for me, I really like environmental, international human rights law. Um, I'm also fascinated in criminal law. I think that it's really, really fun. Like, I mean, it's kind of morbid, but it's really, really fun, especially international law, because you get to see the difference between legal systems. And I love seeing how different countries like communicate with each other, or how they would adhere to different laws and different domestic laws. Like, I think it's really interesting.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Miss Dietmar, which field?
I would very much like to go into international business law, seeing as that would permit me to combine my two subjects, law and economics. That's also why I really, really appreciated this motion, because I was able to analyze CBAMs from an economic point of view, but then also from a legal point of view. And so that was fascinating. And I really, really liked the fact that I was able to really have a case that I was able to research and look into detail concerning a certain subject, and then with the climate point of view, it was lovely. Thank you so much for the topic, for the motion.
Thank you very much. So Miss Urbanova, she knows that when I hear law and economics, it means something for me, because I used to teach it for 11 years, even if my students in THIULDT did not like it at all, but it's useful. It's very useful. Richard Posner, Ronald Coase, anyway. But yes, so now Miss Jabbar, which area of law?
I personally enjoyed research on international law. It's one of my favorites. It well, for the topics that we researched so far throughout the competition, it really expanded my knowledge with the different organizations, the different acts, and just learning about the different cases in different jurisdictions was really interesting to me. So I really appreciated that. Thank you.
Okay, very well. Mr. Velef? Commercial law, no? Mr. Velef, you said it once.
Yeah, so for me, I think it's more a private international law and international business law as well. I think it's closest to the topic of last time because also for my master's too, I would like to maybe pursue arbitration and commercial law. So that was really interesting. And yeah, I know I'm not very someone who's in the public sphere of law. But I think it was really interesting to have to kind of deal with that and be in an environment that I know it. It's not that I have never done public law, but it's a different type of situation. And I, in my whole university studies, I chose more private international law. So yeah, so it was really interesting to research on things that I haven't seen that much yet.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Okay, so that is more my colleague arbitration, Caesarfield, Vismut Court, and so I know nothing about that. Personally, no, I know, but it's just not my expertise. And on the side of Miss Murray?
The law that I prefer is international human rights law. And honestly, doing these topics kind of show you that international human rights kind of go beyond the individual, because at the end of the day, it's not just the individual, but it's also the country. And I feel like these topics really help because in doing the affirmative and the dissenting, you have to consider, okay, well, this disadvantages this country. And then you have to kind of counter that and be like, how do I counter this? This fact that it is disadvantaging the country, but come back strong and be like, but it's necessary. And then it kind of shows you too that human rights isn't so black and white, because you need to consider, hey, the climate, but hey, some countries can't afford this. And so it's really interesting having to try and balance those two. And it really kind of opened my eyes to how difficult and very vast human rights can go. So yeah.
Ah, indeed, yes, because it has an impact on everybody, not just the states themselves, but their population. So, so yes, I have some colleagues who research on those topics where already climate change is already affecting the human rights. And now, same question for Miss Mahboubani. What is your preferred area of law?
My preferred area of law would be comparative law. I would like to do comparative research between economic law, between the systems of the USA and France, or common law systems against the French system. And what interests me the most is the notion of economic property. So I would like to do research on that very specifically. And comparative law is really what interests me because I'm in history of law and law. And so since I study both, I already have a lot of research projects in the sense of that prepare me to write memoirs and things like that. And by studying the history of law, I realized that comparative law is really something that interests me thoroughly in its research aspect. So that's what I would like to do.
Okay, very good. I think in another team, yeah, for the networking session in another team, I think there is a student as well who is in, yes, he's in Bologna. He was speaking about Roman law, so history of law. So yes, that is another opportunity indeed to connect with students who are in different master programs, but having the same area of law, because for research for the future, particularly to find actually colleagues who research in the future on the same topics, that will be useful. So that's what my colleagues are doing when they go to conference, to network, so particularly. So in any case, that was a great opportunity to have you discussing the CBAMs, international trade, and we'll wait for the results from the judge. We'll be watching and rewatching the match during the next days. Again, congratulations for this free match, because this free match, it shows as well that you have flexibility to jump from a public law. Mr. Villaf, he managed to debate on public law. As you can see, it's really a lot of, I would say, flexibility that students in 1 week they are able to do in order to become expert and debate on it. And after, of course, that break in April, then there will be other areas of law for the 16 best teams of the competition. But for the moment, we wait for the results, and then we'll connect with you again for the networking session. This time you will be with all the other teams. We'll have some activities we'll tell you in advance by email, of course. But in any case, another element as well that I should mention soon, if you need a certificate of participation, because you have already done so much, you'll be able to ask us by email as well. And that will tell to all the students as well by message. And that's all for the moment. So many thanks for this evening and early afternoon in Trinidad and Tobago, and we'll tell you the results for the full group as well during the next days by email, and as well afterwards publicly on LinkedIn. So many thanks for your time and for your research, and that was a very, very nice match today. So we keep contact, and we see you soon. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.